Okay, year 11, continuing with our revision, we are looking now at Bayonet Charge by Ted Hughes. Ted Hughes is a 20th century English poet, and this poem was published in 1957. And whilst Hughes himself didn't serve in the army, he did spend 2 years with the RAF before he moved to more of an academic life at university. However, his father did serve and survive World War I, and it's often believed that this poem is a reflection of the struggle of soldiers during that time. So let's deal with the what. The poem focuses on a soldier's personal experience as he charges the enemy line. In fact, the title itself is a clue. The bayonet in the charge is a blade attached to a rifle. And it shows us how sometimes frantic and how sometimes unplanned the soldiers had to move within the army. Overridingly, there's a sense of fear in this poem. And that is evident from the start, and it consumes the soldier and it takes him over, so he responds quite naturally and automatically to we assume the guidance he's being given. And because of this, all of the patriotic ideals he had, the reasons why he wanted to fight in the first instance, are lost. He's too consumed by fear. So if we start to think about some of the language that Hughes uses to try and engage the reader and show us the reality of war for these soldiers, one of the first things we want to refer to is the adverb suddenly, which opens stanza 1. And that instantly reminds the reader of the immediacy and the panic the soldiers frequently felt. There wasn't a sense to respond and think through what they were going to do. As the poem continues, Hughes uses the pronoun he when he references a soldier, and this happens throughout all 3 stanzas. Now, could this be because it's not a certain set experience of his own and it's not first person? Possibly. Many believe, though, that the reference to the he is keeping the soldier anonymous so that he could represent any soldier. In fact, this poem may be as relevant today as it was during World War I, which it's actually set about. There is also then some emotive language, particularly with adjectives like raw. It's talking about the way in which the soldier feels. The raw in raw seamed hot khaki, the reference to his uniform. The raw suggests that there is some sense of physical discomfort, but the raw is ambiguous. It could also mean something else. And it could be Hughes' way of reminding the reader how difficult a soldier's job was, not just physically, but emotionally, having to deal with the journey that they are on in their fight to defend their country. Hughes also plays around with similes, and there's a few similes used in this poem to great effect. First thing is in the second stanza, Hughes refers to a simile like a man who has jumped in the dark and runs listening between the footfalls for the reason for his running. Like a man who has jumped in the dark and runs listening. Why is he running? This simile is a reminder to the reader that the soldier is now questioning his running. Why am I doing this? Maybe not just in this exact fight, but why did I enlist? Why did I fight? What is the point? And we're further reminded of that a little bit later on in stanza 3, when he recalls the reasons for his conscription in the first place. King, honour, human dignity, etc. And that word etc. is key because it's a reminder to the reader that he is now no longer interested in listing the reasons because these things no longer matter. But for a reader, why do they no longer matter? Well, the hare is a clue to that. It seems quite strange that in this poem we're reminded about a hare, the natural world. And why does Hughes do that? Because it's a stark reminder about how vulnerable the soldier is. Like the hare itself, he is dehumanised. He is no longer a person. In fact, references to the fact that his Terra's touchy dynamite at the closing of the poem reminds us that he is no longer a man. He is viewed as a weapon, and as such, potentially sees himself, much like the hare, insignificant. If we think about the structure of the poem, there's a couple of techniques that Hughes deploys to really get us to think about the idea of impulsive nature of war and how little the soldiers had to stop and think. In stanza 1, And in stanza 2, Hughes uses the caesura, the hyphen, to cause a temporary pause. The line, in bewilderment, then he almost stopped. Hyphen. In what cold clockwork? That hyphen reminds the reader that the soldier hasn't got time to stop, hasn't got time to think. He must continue regardless of what he may or may not be feeling. There is also a very uneven line length to this poem, and there are frequent examples of enjambment. Enjambment, again, could remind us that he doesn't have time to stop. It is a continuous movement. But the uneven line length could replicate the idea that the soldiers are finding their movement a struggle. Ultimately, king, honour, human dignity drop like luxuries. He cannot afford to think this way any longer because he is fighting for survival. And the references to being raw and hot, the personification of bullets smacking the belly out the air, emphasise the pain that the soldier can feel and potentially foreshadowing the death he may well experience.